Okay. Okay, everybody, welcome. Members and guests, and do we have any guests tonight? Oh, what? The dog, yes, and Cindy. Okay, now I can't screw up today because we got it all on the board there, so you can watch everything I'm doing, so I'm toast now.
Oh, you're in trouble.
Okay, we're going to read the correspondence and announcements, and there's a book at the back on the table with the printouts if you want to look at it further. The OGS Conference 2016, Genealogy on the Cutting Edge, June 3rd to 5th, and registration is open now. Petrolia Heritage Open House, Saturday, February the 20th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the DTP, with extensive display of aerial photos, vintage maps, and globes. And we're going to be there with the table. So come on in and have a look at everything. They usually have a really good display there. The fourth annual Heritage Fair in London, Snapshots in Time, Saturday, February the 13th, from 9 to 3 at the London Central Library. And the Oil Springs Heritage Day, Family Day, Monday, 15th of February, 2016, from 1 to 4 at the Oil Museum of Canada. So I'm now going to turn the program over to Anne to introduce our speaker tonight. What's the cord there? Manage? It's okay.
Thank you, everyone. Our speaker this evening is our own Alan Campbell, President of the Ontario Genealogical Society. Alan has kindly taken time out of his busy schedule to tell us about his research trip last year to the Isle of Wight in Hampshire, England. This is of particular interest to me as I was born on the Isle of Wight many moons ago. It is one of the prettiest islands in England. The Isle of Wight is famous for its international sailing races every year in July. The hovercraft ferry to the island is booked up solid for the whole month of July. So anyway, welcome, Alan. And
thanks, Ann. I'm going to work from this side, so I'm not walking through it, but that's unnatural because I'm right-handed, but I'll survive. Thank you for coming out when it's not raining. And if you take a look at the picture there, it's not necessarily really obvious, but if you look at the street, you'll notice that there's a little water on the street.
Alan, you need to use the light, you can hold it.
On this one, I'm going to go across after all. Is that good?
Keep it waxed good.
That better?
Yeah, just keep just off the chin, a little better.
The almost. This trip sprung quickly as things are wont to do in my life right now. My life works on, I'm away mostly only between board meetings because it's not good that the president's not there for a board meeting. This one happened to cross over one. It occurred about 6 weeks before we were to cruise out of Southampton, England. And my wife, anyone who knows me knows my wife is the one who organized the tour. She says, "Dear, would you like to go here?" And I said, "Yes, dear, I'd like to go there." So she organizes the tour. And about 6 weeks before we were to cruise, it just clicked and I thought, Southampton, that's a 30-minute ferry ride from the Isle of Wight. And that's where my Atkey family's from. So in 6 weeks, I put it all together to figure out how I would do it. Oh, did I hit the wrong thing? There we go. And these were the key strategies. And that doesn't include the fact that I didn't have anything on paper for the family, much. And I created a family history within that 6 weeks as well to take with me. I had 3 key contacts that made life easy for me. And if you've got contacts or can make contacts when you're planning to do a trip, regardless whether it's in Canada, in the United States, or it's across the ocean, it's good to hang on to them. Elf Damp lives in the island, and I made contact with him a number of years ago when he posted on the old Ontario Roots Web listserv type thing. And he was asking about a Damp family that had lived in Toronto. And as soon as I read through the message, and I probably would have ignored it completely, except for the fact it said Elf Damp, Isle of Wight. And at that time, my ancestors came from the Isle of Wight. So I thought, this is interesting. So I responded, did some research for him, and he did some research back. So a couple of times I contacted him and just said, Elf, tell me about if I want to travel to the island, etc. I belong to the Isle of Wight Family History Society, so why wouldn't you contact somebody who's on the committee who lives on the island himself? And Fred Atkey is a distant cousin, and I'll leave it at that for the moment. So Elf, first thing he suggested to me, he says, rent a car that has an automatic in it, because he said you don't want to be worrying about being on the wrong side of the road and trying to shift at the same time. Well, I chickened out entirely and did not rent a car, period, because I have a tendency to be distracted when I'm driving, and it's okay when the car knows where it's going in the city of Sarnia. You know, that's okay, you get away with it, but if I'm on the wrong side of the road, it's not so good. He talked about an appropriate place to stay, suggested some. And then he talked about the attractions, and this happens to be Carisbrooke Castle, which is close to Newport. John was my contact in terms of transportation, because he said you don't want to take the train, and he says the bus service is terrible. So basically, what he set up for me was he gave me a company that picked me up. They picked us up at the airport. They drove us by car into Portsmouth. We caught the white ferry link across, and the ride taxi was waiting for us on the other side, and drove us to the hotel where we were staying. Now, don't ask me how much it cost, because it was a little more expensive than the cost of taking the train or the bus. But let me tell you, after flying for 8 hours, it was heaven to sit in the back seat and let somebody else do it, and let somebody else wrestle the suitcases, except onto the ferry. He even suggested good places to eat, but I discovered that he liked to eat a lot fancier than I did. So we didn't use all of his suggestions. And I did have a chance to sit with him in a small pub with elbow room. When he had 12 people in, we just had elbow room left, and had a pint with him, and we chatted about the trials and tribulations of Genealogical Society. So that was an added benefit. That's a hotel that we stayed in. Now, Fred, whole nother story altogether. The history there, how did I contact him? I was cleaning out the mailbox over the summer for the branch. I'd even forgotten who the chair of the branch was. And so that meant I had all the newsletters. So I'd go scan through them, looking for names, and British Columbia genealogist came through, and there said Atkey. And I thought, my God, there's not many of them in the world. So I sent a letter away and didn't hear for a while. Then I got a letter back that said, I haven't got time to write you anything down, but there's this person who lives in Grimsby. Why don't you contact her and she can help you out. Sent a letter to her. This is before email. And she responded with about 15 sheets of family laid out. She's, I'm not the one you want to talk to. You want to talk to Fred in England. So in 3 contacts, I was back to the old man of the mountain who's doing the entire Atkey family. So I thought that was wonderful. And then I discovered what he also does. If you're nice to him and send him information, he sent out a yearly newsletter. And this runs sometimes 10, 12 pages. And it's not just names, places, talks about the information that found it, talks about people he's come across, talks about the war heroes, the whole bit. So a lot of information in them. So at that time I said, I don't need to research the Atkey family. He's going to write a book. Well, that was, I'm not sure how many years ago, and he's got the book. He's up to 1,000 pages, and I'm hoping that he gets it done, because I want a copy. It's going to cost me a fortune to have it shipped over, but I want to get a copy of it. But I did less research because I knew that was happening out there. I went back to deal with my Campbells, my Sims, and all that. And that's actually a page from one of them. He was the one that told me not to take he said, stay off the train. The other thing he did was, I sent him a letter saying, Fred, I'm coming over, and if you happen to be able to come over, maybe we can meet. And I get a letter back, and he says, sorry, Alan, he says, the day you're coming in, I'm heading for Scotland to do research. So that would, and then the day afterwards, got a second letter, or a day or two afterwards, got a second letter, and he says, I didn't tell you about. And so he rhymed off the list of the places that I should go to see that related to the Atkey family. Well, I had pulled them out of his newsletters already, but it was good to have that contact as well. So there you go. That's how it was done. Oh, I'm doing this right here. We came in Portsmouth, took the Wight ferry link across to Ryde, and then Newport is in the middle here. And then we, part of the Ryde, you got, when you do something like this, people say, well, did you do a lot of genealogy? Well, I thought, I can do genealogy from a distance. I'll do a minimum of genealogy. The rest of the time I want to walk where my people walked. So that was far more important to me on the trip, although I got some research in, and you'll understand why when I tell you that later. So part of the ride is the fact that out of Cowes here, you can take a high-speed catamaran ferry, and that we love riding on boats, so we had to do that. And it was really intriguing because we go and we're going along, and you can't tell that you're traveling at a great clip. We realized how fast we'd gone when we were going out with the cruise ship, and it went by us on the way back to Cowes the next day, and it just left us like we were standing still in the water. So we were going a lot faster than I thought we were. Okay. And there's the Red Jet catamaran. And we stayed at the Travelodge. And the first thing I've got up there is expectations. Because some of the problems with traveling is people go figuring like, I hate to say negative things about our neighbors to the south, but I've been on a lot of trips with them, and it isn't the United States, so it's not good. And you have to say to them, folks, lighten up a little. It's different. Roll with it and enjoy it. Both John and Alf said of the Travelodge, it isn't the Ritz. And fortunately, as we found out when we walked in and spoke to Jill, who was working the front desk, she says, it's unfortunate you've come in the rainy season. This is the 1 week we get a lot of rain. And I said, well, we didn't have a lot of options because it's the week before the cruise goes out. Anyway, wonderful spot. Jill was great. We were tired. And she says, look, you're here early. She says, it's going to cost you $10 more to stay, to get in early. But she was, let me make you a cup of tea. And you go over there, sit in the couch, and we felt right at home already. And it was that way the whole time we were there. I booked it online, and it was interesting when I went through the sites like Speedy and all those, there were no rooms available. But when I went to the hotel itself, I was able to pick one off because I was really concerned. I took this one because it's right in Newport and central on the island and within walking distance of the bus system, which worked out well for us. So booked online. Wireless, well, you had two options. You could get a free hour a day, or you could pay for it. We figured we weren't going to be there enough to make it worthwhile. I did put a plan on my phone, which didn't really work well. If I did it again, I would immediately run out as soon as I landed, and I'd go buy a SIM card, stick in my iPad, and I'd operate from that route through email and all that kind of thing. Service. I always believe that services, you get the service with the attitude you give, because it was really interesting. I wrote a TripAdvisor review of it, because all the staff were wonderful, from the people who worked food for breakfast to the people who worked the desk, couldn't do enough. In fact, when we got there, Jill hefted the biggest suitcase and up the stairs, up into the elevator, up with it, and we didn't even have to carry it, that kind of thing. And it was that way. But the TripAdvisor review immediately after ours was absolutely negative. And I thought, you get what you give. Oh, by the way, expectations. It was good. It was a rainy season because air conditioning was opening the window. No, there was no telephone in the room. You couldn't call the front desk. You had to go down to talk to them. And we discovered that the TV remote was unusual. You didn't press on to make it start. You had to press something else to make it start. We had to get that explained to us, but it was delightful. It was delightful. We just left the window open all the time because it was raining out quite a bit and it was relatively damp, and so it was comfortable. Something I did this time, which I'd never done before, is I stopped at Bob Bailey, our MPP's office, and then went over to Pat Davidson's office and picked up some Canada pins and Ontario pins and took them. And all the people we gave them to on the Isle of Wight loved them. I gave some, I think I gave one of each to every person who worked in the hotel, and they were just happy, really happy. So we do that for waitresses and so on. It was a nice touch. So now that the car was eliminated, we were down to two other options, which was bus and walking. And fortunately, when you're in Newport, walking is not an issue. We walked to the bus station and we could do that in less than 10 minutes. We could catch restaurants within 10 minutes easily, or a pub. And I was 10 minutes away from the street on which my fourth great grandfather, Isaac Atkey, had his, he was a cordwainer, so a boot and shoe maker. And so I walked the street he was on. Now, unfortunately, the insurance fire maps didn't cover the time period that he was there, because I'd love to have found out exactly where it was, but that wasn't to be. Southern Vectis runs the bus system, and if you actually live in the Isle of Wight, it's free. You can travel anywhere you want on the buses, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Not so for Canadians. I'm a firm believer that before you go out the door, you should have some idea of where you're going, what you're looking for. I knew that there was an Isle of Wight records office, and they have an excellent website. And I laughed, it mentions the hillside barrier. That doesn't affect you when you're on foot, but it's a rod across the street, so if you're driving a car, you got to go the long way around to get to it. Just things to know if you're happen to be traveling a particular way. This was the important part where you see what they've got to offer, and I was interested in apprenticeship indentures, and I was interested in the marriage index register, and noticed that some of the other things down here as well that were possible. And this site was excellent in the fact that you could download a book about the type of records that are available, so that you had no excuse for not knowing roughly what was available there. And you could even check the database, and here's my Isaac Atkey, 1801, and he has taken on apprentice James Yelf, and I'll show you a picture of that later. Unfortunately, the Family History Society's library collection was not available. They had the issue of having to find a new place to store it, so it was in storage for on a temporary basis. But they do have a good website as well. And as you can see, printed out all the Atkeys, some of whom made sense to me. Some of them I haven't gone that deep because, like I said, Fred has done reams of them. And if you want to see what pre-software looks like for family trees, this opens up to cover almost the entire page. And that's the tree that shows the Canadian line the Atkeys that came to Canada that I'm part of. Roughly 1853, he came as a Wesleyan missionary to serve the Indians up in the Arreton area. And then neat part too was check out whether there's links to other sites that would be of value. And Shalfleet was the area where the Atkeys were back in the 1600s. It was more towards the late 1700s 1700s into the early 1800s that they ended up in Newport. And of course, the record office. Tuesday when we arrived on the island, it was raining, so I didn't do too much. We traveled. Donna took a nap, and I went out and jumped from doorway to doorway to see a little bit of the town. Took a whole bunch of pictures, which I retook the following day when it was a little drier. And then we woke up with our, the air conditioning on, and it was just pouring the next morning, absolutely pouring. So I said, okay, record office day. So I thought, well, I'll be cheap and I won't take a cab, I'll just walk, but it was raining. And I got on my good coat that I thought was rainproof. Not a chance, not a chance. I had taken the light one. I had a hemmed and hod. I had a heavier one, and I hemmed and hod because I didn't want to add to the weight in the suitcase. I should have taken the heavier one. This was one prize that I wanted. I knew it was there and I wanted to get it. This is my James Atkey, the one who came to Canada as a missionary afterwards. He was also a cordwainer, shoemaker, apprentice, learned from his father, and then converted from the Anglican faith to the Wesleyan Methodist faith, which was not really a good move in those days. It wasn't really, didn't do anything to ensure your popularity. So I don't know whether it was that the cordwainer business was starting to taper off, or whether it got uncomfortable on the island that he actually came to Canada as a missionary. I think both things may have been happening, because there was starting to become, factories are starting to come in, and it was going away from the specialist who made the whole boot or shoe to somebody to do the sole, and somebody do the uppers, and then somebody else would put them all together. So it's interesting to know that thing. Now I love this too. Notice the wife's name, Jane Trafalgar Grapes. And how do I know? One of the things that's missing from here are his parents' names. But if you look at the witnesses, let's see, we've got James Atkey, James Trafalgar Atkey, that are Grapes. There's the pair that got married. Then down here, we got George Grapes, we've got Elizabeth Grapes, but of course we've got Charlotte Waterloo Grapes.
Bush Grapes, I.
What? Great monikers? Well, my family, this Grapes family, is enshrined in a couple of books. Jane Trafalgar Grapes was born in 1805, daughter of John and Hannah Grapes. You've got William Nile Grapes. You've got Charlotte Waterloo Grapes and Charles Wellington Grapes. I'm not going to tell you the name of the book. You can come up and look after it and probably get tossed out of the church for using the improper language. But it was a cute book. I found it on Google. This is the indenture. I was amazed at how extensive it was. And I don't know how accurate it was, but it builds in a lot of protection for the apprentice. And in this case, my understanding from Fred Atkey is that this the young lad was a son of a relative, and he was taking him in as an apprentice because his father had died, who was also in the business. So probably making sure that he didn't starve to death in the process. But it's quite extensive, and I've got a copy of a full-size copy of it up here if you'd like to take a look at it just to read. It couldn't have been all good though, because Fred tells me he's found a couple of ads for runaway apprentices that Isaac Atkey had to put in the paper. So I asked if he would consider sending me copies of those. Then of course you try and pin people down. I'd had the death notice, but it doesn't indicate where he was buried. And then they had a burial information notice that for St. James, Carisbrooke. And that's the other thing, you talk about expectations. It helps if somebody knows and can talk to you about the expectations for what you sign, can find there. And Fred said to me, he says, don't go looking for a whole lot of cemetery stones, because you're not going to find them. And you'll see why. This is Churchplace, and somewhere along this line is where the shop was. And the reason it's called Churchplace is because you can see right there, That's the backyard of the church. So the church is over in this area here. And we did find when we wanted cheap meals, we headed to, whoops, there we go. We headed to Augie's right here. Fish and chips. Because the last time we were in England, we ended up getting fish and chips at it was a restaurant named after the Sopranos. So you can imagine it wasn't very English, but that's where we got our fish and chips. So this time we got fish and chips at a true fish and chips place. This is the church that's in front of it. Like I said, we love checking out the churches. The architecture of some of them is just fabulous. And it's so interesting to see the difference between some of them. And I figure that Isaac is buried somewhere under the pavement about there. Like I said, there's reasons why you're not going to see a stone. And notice the plainness in this one. Considerable difference. We were very lucky. We ran into one of the, I guess you maybe call them the elders of the church, and he chatted with us for quite a while about it. And he was another John. He knew the John Matthews that had given me advice prior to going. It's a small island, I guess. And we had to see this. This is the Atkey cottage. And notice where the road is. You wouldn't want to step out the door. And of course, we had to go here. Now, this doesn't date back far enough for my Atkeys to have had a pint there, but we deliberately decided we had to have a pint there. And it was really interesting because the church is up the road this way and the cottage is down this way. So we're in and we had a pint and we're talking to the bartender, and we said, do you know where the Atkey cottage is? No idea. It's right next door, across the street. So you never get no guarantees that a local person, of course you don't know if he's local or not, he could have driven in. But the proper pub atmosphere. But they did have wireless. We were able to Skype home, talk to my mother-in-law. Modern things. This is the church, dating back to the 1100s. Massive, massive church. And there, you can't tell from this, but as well. But most of those tombstones, if you went over and looked at them, it's just stone. There's no inscription to be seen on them at all because they're so weathered from age. Oh, there's a good example. And the interior. Beautiful big church. But it was originally, I think what they did was they designed it so that it could be fortifications in cases of raids, because the Isle of Wight had problems with being attacked easily from the sea and also being a church. Had to go here. This is cows. This is Pascall Atkey's Chandlery shop. No longer in the Atkey family, but it is probably the only place you're going to find the Atkey name on something. It's not a very common name anymore. It's close to the water for obvious reasons. So we had to tour it. And inside, other than the fact they had all the modern yachting equipment, like the special all-weather suits and things like that, it was pretty rustic looking as far as shelves and things like that. And then the type material was that there was a library display that was about 3 or 4 blocks away, and it talked about that cows and the history of cows, and it had mentioned there, and it even had photos of original shops that the Atkeys had owned in the area. Anne Yelf was the wife of Isaac Atkey. And there's another one of those fortress-style churches. And these stones were much the same. Like, unless somebody had kept a record from long ago, you wouldn't know where. My wife does quilts, so I couldn't resist taking a picture of the quilt. That's the stone I went for. The dairyman's daughter is buried there. And the inscription. So Elizabeth Wallbridge is known as Dairyman's daughter. And at the age of 31 would have gone into history and been forgotten very quickly, except for the fact that she was a wonderful person who came home and looked after her parents until her death, and then proceeded for the rest of her life to help people less fortunate. And somebody wrote a tract about her. And that's downloaded as a note from the Gutenberg collection. I've got a copy of it on my iPad. Makes it an interesting story. And it's interesting for the fact that she would have never been known. Even known wouldn't have paid any attention to her. And she wouldn't be historical at all if he hadn't written this book. And there's the way I'm connected. And it's interesting when genealogy becomes a business. And we did have lunch in this particular pub. I talked in a few pictures at the end here because I thought they were good and there's reasons for them as well. This one is an interesting one. We happen to be sitting on a bus, which is right about here. And we're looking at this because this bus here is a town bus. And he had just got somebody on using the handicap ramp. And apparently the button that set, like, if it doesn't wind properly and push the button the correct way, the bus won't start. So we have a bus that is stopped. All those cars, the second line of cars over here, they're all parked and there's nobody in them. And it's just that slot through the middle that you can go through it. So we're sitting there and we sat and we sat and we sat until they finally said that the bus driver called dispatcher, and so they were going to get us a bus. And just as we were getting out of the bus to go, they got it going and away we went. But we just drove home. We were heading for Arreton at that time to go up to see the Dairyman's daughter's cemetery stone, and it just drove home the whole idea that don't make your schedule too tight because you may not get all in. Live with it, just roll with what's going on. I love seeing what the locals do. And I put this one in because it was neat. When we walked by it, it wasn't open because it was too early. When we walked back, we were 10 feet away and we knew it was open. But it is delightful to see all the various things. And in fact, one of the best meals we had was not on the island, but it was in the Shetland Islands, a fish and chip place just right off the dock where the cruise ship was. I put this one in because Atkey's Cottage would be just around the corner right there. Notice the width of the road? It's one way. And there's a stoplight because the traffic has to stop so that one side can go through and go back. It's much the same way it was many years ago. The reason why you ride in a double-decker bus. We discovered very quickly that if you ride in the lower level of the double-decker bus when you're out in the English countryside, you don't see anything because the hedgerow and the trees are too tall. But if you get up but don't do that if you're planning getting off in two stops and you don't know which one you're getting off at. We stayed down on those cases, but then we finished out the run sometimes. We just said, look, we're here to see things. So we finished out the run. And that was one of the beautiful ones. Mm-hmm. Well, we're sitting up there and we were lucky we got the front seat. And that's the view of the countryside off the ramparts of Carisbrooke Castle. Beautiful spot. And I couldn't resist putting this one in. That's in cows. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And I thought that is neat. That is neat. And I suppose every genealogist should have one of those because I think we've got a lot of, I know I've got a lot of random crap sitting in file folders that maybe belongs to the family and doesn't. And I must thank the Isle of Wight Records Office and the Isle of Wight Family History Society for giving me permission to use anything that the website clips and those kind of things, because they were very prompt. They turned around within a day and said, yes, go right ahead, and said, maybe people will come and visit us. So you're invited. So thank you. And I would field questions if you're interested.
Did you go around the whole island?
No, we didn't get around the whole island. We did, well, we came through from Ryde, so we had the tour that way. And then we did Newport, and we down as far as Arreton, and then we headed out and just about to the Needles and back, and then the Churchplace. We just found it time-wise. We didn't. If we had taken, in retrospect, if I'd even rented a car for one day, we could have done a few more things in there. I missed a few things I'd like to see, but
How big is the island? Like how many miles around is it?
a lot longer than it is when you measure from what they twist and turn. They twist and turn a lot. And in fact, we were being lost. We couldn't retrace when we came back. We went out one way and we came back another way along the water there. When you saw the water picture, we went through small towns and we were making tight turns and we would never found a way. We would never known where to go.
Thanks, Ellen. On behalf of our group, we'd like to thank you. Oh, anyway, thank you for
Yes.
How is the apprenticeship handled? Is it handled like privately or through the church or through the workhouse or something?
It's actually,
What is it? Oh, I guess I can look at it.
yes, you can look at it, but it's a good question.
Because,
Between the mayor, alderman, and chief burgesses of the borough of Newport and the Isle of Wight.
oh,
That's who
okay.
they've agreed
So
with.
it's kind
Between
of
the
the government sort of thing.
Mhm.
It's really interesting.
Thanks, Ellen. I'm going to ask now for a motion to adjourn the regular meeting so that we can open the AGM meeting. Did I get a motion on the floor? Catherine and Jane, thank you. We're going to remind you that all the minutes from the last AGM meeting is up on the wall, plus our last regular meeting, which was in November. And we're going to take a short 5-minute break so that you can have a look at Alan's information. And because of the weather, we're going to cut it short. That's okay with everybody.
That's what I forget.
Alan. Keep everyone at hand.
Doesn't give anything, doesn't give everything.
White shine on the top of your head.
That's one of the problems.
Yes.
Morning, doing 5 minutes.
Free software family tree.
Oh, wow.
May
And
14th.
that's whenever he wanted to revise it. The hard thing.
Oh, my God.
It's like very meticulous, very meticulous. Yeah.
You ordered that, right?
No, he sent that through to me. Well, his father did that.
Who printed it?
Yeah, sometimes.
That way folks at home can see.
That he said to.
These are just some things that Alan brought along.
He was coming here tonight. Thank you.
It was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Small crowd for a snowy winter.
Yeah, well, after, yeah, but.
I don't know where that slide is. It says about, I know I put it in somewhere. I put a slide in about what's happening for April 14. I was thinking I could leave that up till.
It'll save it and put two there.
Like you.
Don't forget to talk about May 14th.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna get started again. I guess it's getting nasty out. If we could have a motion to open the AGM. Jane. Oh, God, and Catherine. All in favor? Good. I have to apologize to Catherine, I didn't put her name on there. I copied an old agenda, I guess, that's why, sorry. Okay, Janet, I don't think we're gonna read the minutes because they're boring anyway. So there wasn't anything exciting and no errors or omissions and nothing, no new business. So if we could have a motion to accept the minutes of the last AGM, someone that was there. Sheila and Jane. All in favor? Carried. Okay, I'm going to read you quickly the chair's year-end report that I send in to the OGS. Our branch has completed a lot of scanning and digitalizing this year due to the dedication of a few volunteers and the hiring of a summer student. All of our family history books have been scanned and backed up digital copies finished this year. High school yearbooks, cemetery updates, newspaper articles, and pictures have been scanned and transcribed and are now available either on the internet or in members-only website. Several church and funeral home records have been scanned and a digital copy prepared for the record preservation by the business or the institution. And by being made searchable, information can be made available when a family cannot find a death or marriage certificate. These records of the living fall under the same protection as the Canada Archives. We are continuing our indexing of births, marriage, and death of Petroleum Advertiser topic newspapers at our Lambton County Archives in Wyoming. In addition to this, a news and events section is being added to include elections, disasters, anniversaries, reunions, etc. Our branch website, which is constantly being updated and now has a searchable name index, is a great resource tool and is one of the perks of an OGS membership. A total of 5 classes open to the public were held at the Petrolia Library and added some new memberships. The selection of officers timed the first of the year, and we are always hoping for new faces will step forward to take on a position to help promote the branch and the OGS. Please think about volunteering or bringing in some new members who are interested in searching past. That's going to be in the news next, so. One last thing you'll have to read. As far as the AGM, I'm going to turn it over to Alan, because Noreen is not here tonight because of the weather, and he will ask for some of those wonderful volunteers.
Right.
Here.
I'll reach out.
I don't know what she had prepared at all.
Just acclamation for treasure and something.
It's acclamation for Janet and Nancy and you, I guess. That's it. I guess. Unless you can find somebody here.
You never know, never know. It's a wonderful job.
What?
Big chair. I have experience.
You
Okay.
can come back.
Yeah, there you can do
Oh.
it too.
Not for a while. Kind of busy. That's why I've been standing up so much tonight, is because I spent the prime part of the day sitting and a large chunk of it in front of my computer. The OGS email has been going nuts lately, and a lot of things flying. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. Karen Ferguson has indicated that she will stand as a nomination for chair, or to hold the chair position. Do I have any other nominations from the floor? Or people who are going to leap to their feet and shout, "I will do it"? And I'll ask again, are there any other nominations from the floor? And a third time, are there any nominations from the floor? And hearing none, we'll consider Karen acclaimed.
Shucks.
Thank you, Karen. And then we do not have anyone for a vice chair position. Is there a nomination from the floor for vice chair? I like that you're trying. Is there a nomination from the floor for vice chair? And a third time, is there a nomination from the floor for vice chair? And seeing no one leaping to their feet, consider that position unfilled. And if somebody has second thoughts later on, talk to Karen. She will welcome you with open arms. I guess we have secretary, and Jenna Kelch has let her name stand forward again. Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor for the role of secretary? And a third time, are there any other nominations from the floor for the role of secretary? And hearing none, thank you, Jen. You deserve credit for being long-serving. Treasurer, Nancy Brown has allowed her name to be put forward, and she is prepared to stand. At least I haven't heard any objection. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? And a third time, are there any other nominations from the floor? Consider Nancy Brown acclaimed. Thank you. And I want you to know that across this fine society of ours, one of the difficult roles to fill is the role of treasurer, because it's not easy. And so I certainly, as both a Lambton Branch member, appreciate having Nancy on board, and also as a president, Knowing that we're going through a full audit this year, an intensive audit, because we changed auditors for that purpose, to have the society checked into the closet and clean out the dust and make sure everything was done right. So there's been more demands of branch treasurers for information, and there's going to be a true consolidated statement. So have I missed anybody on? That's everybody that's an elected position, right? Okay. Well, thank you very much for standing. I would conceivably put my name forward, but I'm keeping busy right now.
Thanks, Alan. As far as the AGM, that brings it to a close. So if I could have a motion to close the AGM. Catherine and Nancy back there.
Oh, they're fast.
Yeah. All in favor? Okay, we're gonna move on to reconvene the regular meeting. So we're back to another motion to reconvene the meeting again. I don't know if all these formalities are necessary, but okay, Nancy and Sheila. And all in favor again. Good exercise for them. And we need another motion to approve the minutes of the last regular meeting. Is it necessary, Alan? That's formality to open and close the meeting.
I
It is.
gather.
Oh. Could we have a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting of November? Someone that was here. Were you okay? As seconder.
Aaron, too.
I think your first name. Dave? Dave?
Steve.
Steve.
Fields. Steve Fields.
Oh, okay.
All in favor?
And who seconded?
Jane. Okay. On to these committee reports. Okay, Nancy, treasurer's report.
Okay, for the statement in January, we've received the membership for the year, so it'll be included in our amounts for money we have to run off this year. So our Canadian account, we have $7,692.71. And the US account, $261.86.
Thanks, Nancy. And for the annual physical report for the treasurer, which goes in separately, but we also hired a summer student this summer. Excellent. Rachel did an excellent job, and she was paid $1,000 for her work for the summer. And she did a lot of scanning at the archives. Very good work. Sales, Doug McCordick is not here tonight. For 2016 so far, we have $83 in PayPal and $43 in research. And the total amount of sales for the year of 2015 was $699.76. The newsletter, Alan, do you have anything to report for?
Just remember me in August. August is when everybody kind of forgets that there's a newsletter going to come out in September. So I will MailChimp people that are on email, though, and remind you. But that's
I can read your report if you'd like.
Yeah, I can't remember what I wrote.
Okay, the 4 issues of Lambton Lifeline were sent out both electronically and by post in a timely manner. One of our members, Gail Benjafield, commented positively about how the branch was punctual with its newsletter delivery. Members responded well to calls for submissions sent out via MailChimp. The call prior to December issue brought in 4 items. The Lambton County Archivist Dana Thorne provided an article for each issue in 2015. And her article in September issue of Lifeline, What is the True History, the Shaw-Gusher Theory, was reprinted in Newsweek at the request of Joyce Finland, editor, because she felt it was an article that all members of the OGS should read. Military research was a major theme this year, although the articles ranged over many topics. I especially appreciated receiving the images and transcriptions for William Gould of Dawn Township. Dawn is a township that has not received much press in Lifeline due to the lack of submissions related to research there. Okay, and librarian Diane is not here tonight. She's ill. On her report, she states, we were fortunate to still have our branch library housed at the Lambton Archives in Wyoming. The excellent staff and hours of operation there make it a very helpful and accessible location for researchers. There have been 6 new books added to our holdings this past year. The total expenses for the year were 0 as we did not renew magazine subscriptions. Okay. Research. Bruce said she had 3 requests for research this year, and all researched information was scanned and emailed when possible. And Sheila, I condensed your report. 11th of February, time spent in research and report for Diane Sharrow, 6+ hours to find information on Robert Sloan and his wife Nancy Leston, his parents, siblings, relations, and were born and married. 19th of May 2015, time spent and a further report for Diane Sharrow, 8+ hours to find land records and wills for Robert Sloan and his wife Nancy Leston. 10th of June 2015, time spent in research and report for Mary Ward, 8+ hours to find the marriage for George Ward and Hulda Hicks and Father Moses Ward. Time spent in family research for Barbara Howarth, 8+ hours. Total hours spent researching, 30+ hours, includes writing reports. And the petroleum newspaper transcribing, Sheila says this has been quite a busy year. Along with the regular petroleum newspaper indexing of births, marriages, and deaths, we have added a news and events section, includes elections, disasters, reunions, to name just a few to go along with the Sarnia Observer Index. I spoke to Dana Thorne, Lambton Archivist, and then to Carol Leckie, cataloger, who does the index for Sarnia Observer, and Ellen Dark, reference department at the Sarnia Library. They gave me lots of ideas how to make our index relevant to genealogists and the general public alike. I then consulted with Pat Cook, who is taking on this project for us, along with the regular indexing. Time worked at the archives, 580+ hours. That's for volunteers doing the transcribing. Hours of internet transcribing is unavailable, but I would imagine it would basically be the same or close to it. Proofing for Dropbox, 93 hours, and set up new index, 25 hours. Publications, Jane, do you want me to read this? Or, okay. This year we had many unfinished publications, mostly cemeteries, and some indexes to finish. The sales have dropped off for full books. We now have indexes from the St. Paul's United Church from 1900 to 2015. The marriage books can be used for wedding certificates, and we are allowed to share with funeral homes when the family cannot find a marriage certificate. Because of the living, these records will fall under the same protection as Canada Archives. In the electronic communications, new name index was the biggest thing changed on the website. It has all the cemeteries, funeral home indexes so far, and I hope to add more in 2016. The adding of links to local high school yearbooks hopefully helps many. The branch is now using Facebook as a bulletin board and helping members and non-members. Using Office 365 has made branch mailings look more professional to our customers and members. Of the 187 surveys that was sent out at the end of the year, only 25 were returned. Lambton Branch's use of MailChimp makes it possible to see how many people actually open the newsletter, and we're hoping the survey would give numbers for members-only use. Only about 71% opened the 4 newsletter emails on MailChimp. Classes, a total of 5 classes open to the public were held at Troy Library, and at least 5 to 8 new people attended each class. At least 1 new member joined as a result. I think of having an Ask a Member at the Sarnia Library once a month for 4 months would be a good idea, as not everyone goes to the archives or the LDS Center. This would need to be advertised. Equipment, a new laptop, banner, table stand, display, and stand for microphone, and 2 storage boxes were purchased with the 2015 SOVIP grant. The SOVIP grant has been put on hold for 2016. And once again, the Lambton hired a student who scanned all the rest of the family histories and some of the yearbooks. In January, well, it wasn't January, but in February, Lambton will be streaming our meetings with Google Hangouts and not Adobe Connect. And we gotta thank Cindy for being here to help set that all up.
I know Cindy sometimes gets up on Google Hangouts because she has to adjust things, but tonight she's gonna come up and receive this token for the training she did at my home with us, and for coming up tonight. You can use it as you need equipment still, dear. So hopefully you can help your branches. This is for you, Cindy. You're welcome.
And also, do you wanna
Oh, Courtney, again.
the Barrington County Census are all available online, you see?
Yep, that's the newest thing I just put in members only. All our censuses are in members only. Feel free to use them. We don't sell them, so I think the members should have them.
Okay, cemeteries, David, I wrote this little blurb because we didn't do much this year. This year, we welcomed a new volunteer, David Rodriguez, to the cemetery chair position. He is now undertaking the complex learning process of cemeteries. Bethel United Church Cemetery in Warwick Township was updated with David doing the photography of tombstones. Mount Carmel Cemetery in Brook Township was updated in part with photographs of the oldest tombstones in the original section of the cemetery obtained from cemetery officials. All Mount Carmel Cemetery records were scanned and digitalized for the cemetery board. Alveston Cemetery updating is still being typed. Talk is ongoing by the branch, read the benefits of continuing to update cemeteries. Example, Bethel Cemetery has now been done by another individual and put on the internet. Some branches are collaborating with Canadian Headstones to put photos in and info online. So, program. And do you want me to read your report? We had a variety of interesting topics and speakers this year. Diane Rose, George Pitfield, and Mary Janes gave talks about their family histories. Gary May from Windsor, Dave Elliott from Park Hill, and Shirley Sturtevant from Chatham gave instructional presentations. Laurie Mason, curator of Moore Museum, and Dana Thorne, activist at the Lambton County Archives, gave interesting local history talks. Tom Slater and Randy Evans, local military historians, gave an excellent presentation in November about Sarnia Lambton war casualties. Several of our presentations were live streamed to members who were unable to attend our meetings. And she listed all of our, I'm not going to bother reading all of last year's. While I think of it, in cemeteries, we had a request about the Havas Isaac Synagogue Cemetery in Sarnia.
May I just make a comment about that? I'm looking for that one, honestly. And I sent a request to the synagogue here.
Oh, did you?
Asking, where is it? And,
The synagogue isn't even there anymore, is it?
oh, no, there's the Isaac Synagogue is at McKinsey and Cobden Street.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to find out where the cemetery is. So I contacted the secretary at the synagogue, and she came back to me, and they're still looking to see where the address was of the cemetery.
They've lost it.
Too. Now, I don't spend enough time to it, but on the internet, it says there's a Plan 14, Lot 58 and 60.
Yeah.
Well, I have a map here. I went down to City Hall to the planning department. I spoke to them. He gave me the map, and Plan 14, Lot 58 and 60 is where Boyd Paper is of Brock Street. Yeah, so that's bogus. That can't be right. The other location I had for that cemetery was Concession 4, Lot 58 and 60. When I spoke to the planning department there, well, Concession Road 4 is Confederation line, and Lot 58 and 60 would put you in the middle of the St. Clair River.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and this is from the
They're
internet.
buried at sea.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry.
So now there's a couple other points, cemeteries I'm looking at. I don't know if you have time for you, if you want me to comment or I could wait for next month, but.
No, you can now if you want.
Oh, okay. One interesting one.
Can they hear from him from others?
Okay. One interesting one. If you can go to Google Street Map and look at 522 St. Clair Street in Point Edward. It's right beside where the bridge offices are. So, because if you look in our list of unregistered cemeteries, it says St. 522 St. Clair Street, Point Never. So you drove there, and it's a fenced-in lot. Now, there's a house next door, and there's a bridge meeting office next door to it, but there's a fenced-in area. Looks like it's never been redeveloped, and it still has old, mature trees. So obviously, if there were headstones there, they took it down, but something must be in that ground. So, so I went to the village of Point Never and asked them, and the girl said, "Oh, I never knew there was a cemetery there." They go, "No, the other one, so we call it Eveland Cemetery is an interesting one too." Now, according to the records, it's located on front plot 49. And that goes from Blackwell Side Road up to the lake. Now, one information on the website said that it was the original Sarnia Cemetery, and it was abandoned in 1860. Wow, bogus again. So this afternoon, oh yes, okay. So this afternoon is called the Eveland Cemetery. I went out to the archives and I found they gave a location on Cathcart. Now, I don't know where on Cathcart, but
It's in the backyard.
It's in the backyard of the house. I had seen it. I was there
And there's
maybe
one
a couple
stone.
years ago.
okay.
There's a picture of it on the front of one of the newsletters.
Oh, is that?
I'm not sure what year it was that I did it. I talked to the family.
I'll send that to you, Dave.
There were no markers left.
Well, no, as when I was at the archives, I was going through their cemetery files, and they get, oh yes, here it is. Back in 1967, there was an article in the Sarnia Observer about unknown remains pondered, and it's talking about the Eveland Cemetery. And they said that, well, anyways, I could see want to scan that.
I didn't go that far because I
Okay.
wondered if there'd be municipal records that
Okay.
prove whether or not they actually took the remains out.
Okay, now, according to, and the only thing other that was in that file was this one. They said there's only one headstone remaining. And that was in the file at the
Yeah,
archive.
not
Yeah,
anymore.
it's not a headstone, it's just a great big rock.
Oh,
I'll
is it-
send you a picture.
oh, okay. Now, so I thought, well, was there anything buried there? And yes, when you go on Ancestry and you type in Eveland, and I found there was 3 Evelands that are buried in Eveland Cemetery. So,
You need to douse it. You need to go out and douse it.
I found there's a Sophie Eveland, a Daniel Maitland Eveland, and a Samuel Edwards Eveland. Samuel was buried, died or buried in 1934, and Sophie and Daniel were buried in 1936. And on the death records, it actually said the Eveland Cemetery. So,
Okay.
I'll send you that.
okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll move on now.
Karen, to go back to the Jewish one, I looked up Jaime Shabshaw, who was a big Jewish person. It's Dr. Shabshaw's father. They were all buried in London Synagogue Cemetery.
I think they all went there or Toronto.
And I looked, 3 families were all gone to London.
Maybe it's just a name only. Maybe
But-
it's part of that cemetery.
On our Facebook or on Lambton Lost Found, you'll see that I found where the Jewish cemetery, Jewish church bought 3 different plots to build a church. And so they've gone from one,
It's buried there.
so I put some information up, but they can't have, the cemetery can't be where the church is.
No.
But when Jaime Shabshaw died in 1922 or 25, he went to London and he was part of the church organized group, so.
Okay, moving on. Strays, which was now we're not going to do anymore, but last year they entered approximately 6,000 strays in 2015. As the end of 2015, the branch will no longer be entering strays and forwarding to the OGS. And early settlers, Noreen reported, the response to the early settlers program has been quite sparse this year. There have been some additions, however, and I thank those who added to the collection. Book 6 is nearly full enough that the index for it can be added to the previous index, and the books will be available at the Lambton Archives and the LDS Church. Membership, she stated that she's pleased to report that 2015 we had 217 members registered, and as of right now we have 150 to date this year. Our meetings average 35 people a night, which include 5 to 6 guests, and our online attendance was not as high as we had hoped because there were so many technical difficulties, which we expect to have fixed in the future. Publicity, Janet just said she had sent out notices to area newspapers, signage, TV, Genealogical, and radio stations. And George reported, I just heard from George today. His wife is getting better.
Great.
And he hopes to be here for next month's meeting. That's not it. Somewhere I had it, but he's working with 2 women from Michigan about whether or not they have Indian status, and he's also still working on the reserve with that lady that I can't think of her name.
Okay.
That they're doing research for the reserve. He hasn't been doing very much other than that. British Home Children Anne. She's working on volume 5 of the British Home Children that came to Lambton County. I received 2 new names this year from Catherine Bowman, volunteer at Somber Museum. She sent me the names Eva Kate Hollis and Robert Wren from Somber Township. Catherine was a great help last year with the names of home children from St. Clair Township that enlisted in the Canadian Army in World War I. Wendy Robertson asked if anyone knew of an Ellen Green Walker, 1896 to 1987, a home child. And there was a William Eddles, 1888, 1976, and a Helen Walker, 1896 to 1987, who married in Simcoe in 1990. They were buried in Resurrection Cemetery in Sarnia. And Wendy asked if Helen Walker is the Ellen Green Walker she's looking for. William Eddles is on a public members tree on Ancestry, but his wife is not named, so there's not enough proof to definitely say this is the right Ellen Green Walker. This year has not been very productive as far as research for home children in Lambton County is concerned. It's not your fault that you're not well. She states this because she's not been well. Hopefully 2016 will be a better year. And the liaison report, I don't, do you want me to read that one too? Being I'm in the go here. Plimpton, Wyoming Museum liaison report from Alan Campbell. Due to my workload as president of OGS, I did not get further with my research into the soldiers of Plimpton and Wyoming who are listed on the cenotaphs in each location until recently. I just restarted that research by requesting copies of obituaries for Joshua and Elizabeth Norwood Carter from the Perth County branch of the OGS. Both are buried in Avondale Cemetery in Stratford. The researcher for Perth County Library, Linda Britnell, has informed me that someone else is researching the Carters, and I may be able to find information that will help me to finally identify the Samuel Norwood who is listed on the Kemlaki Cenotaph. Okay, did we cover everyone so far? I think so, yes. I'd like to announce that I have sent in the year-end report to the OGS and the news leaf, and the Ontario Volunteer Awards have been sent in. Donations made to LDS Church and Lambton County Archives, and a thank you letters for the donations to the Lambton branch have been sent out. Also, we have an upcoming, do you have a title for it yet? Do you have a title for this meeting?
Just redoing or redirecting or whatever.
Researching.
Researching.
Okay. And it's going to be May the 14th, 2016. Have you got it up on the?
Oh, I thought I did. There's a slide.
No, the slide.
end of
It's
the
going
year.
to be held
It's the
in
end of the year.
Wyoming at the school. And it's going to be $35, which will include your lunch. And we have speakers now, Mike Quackenbush from the OGS. And his first speech will be Rejuvenate and Stimulate, taking a look at your current state family history research. And his second speech will be Recognize Those Places, connecting places to the people in our research. We'll also have speeches from Steve Fulton and Alan Campbell. It'll be held in the same type as our district research used to be. And we had Kent Windsor and Kent Essex and Sarnia. Are there any questions or queries from the floor?
You have 5 people online watching right now.
Do we? Oh, 5 people online. Yes, Ellen.
2016 was better. I got tired of doing OGS work, so I went back online. I downloaded, they finally got to the point where I downloaded George Gray, who's one of the World I soldiers on the Epitaph. His file was not very complete, or not much in it, but I downloaded 2 of the World War II people who, that has now been released by Ancestry. The only problem is Library and Archives Canada does it much nicer. You download 1 PDF and you get the entire file. But Ancestry gives you a page at a time. And the one that was really intriguing was for a John Stewart, World War II, who gave his life. And there were 27-some pages, which had to be downloaded separately. What I'm doing for the Plimpton, Wyoming Museum is dropping them into Word documents, so he's got the entire selection. But it was really neat. And that one had a picture of the grave, the cemetery site, the battle cemetery site with a wooden cross, which I'd never seen a picture of before. They've got an actual one out at the Plimpton, Wyoming Museum. Letter from the fiance wanting to know information about how he died. It's intriguing stuff that's in there. So even identify all of the possessions of the soldier from, like at the front. And let me tell you, the list is pretty short, but it is interesting. So if you've got any relatives there, or if you just want to dabble, check it out. Unfortunately, you have to go through Ancestry to get it, but I guess you could probably do that out at the Lambton, or you can go here.
So you just go to World War, you go, what is it?
It's World Canadian, yes, World War II, but I'm not sure what would find it for you.
Because they didn't used to have very much on World War II. though.
No, this has been recent.
Yeah.
This has been recent.
Yes, Catherine.
May the 14th, I think you said Wyoming School, I believe it's at Lambton Centennial.
It's Lambton Centennial on Highway Old Heritage Road,
Yes.
my grandson's school.
It's
We got it
Oh,
for free.
it's, okay.
So people from Chatham, it ain't too far to come up that road,
You're all 21.
or London, or we're close to Highway
So it's
80.
the one that, south of Troy, is it?
Yes,
Just
on
south of
Old
Cottage.
Heritage Road. We're just gonna throw it up there.
Okay, there she
Another program I've been watching lately is called Word Junk. It's on the History Channel, and it has a lot of genealogy stuff and how they look for information about people that died in the war. And they're over in Belgium and Holland, and they were finding a lot of information about stuff that they find. They're digging up stuff, and they're finding stuff that a Bible belonged to someone, and they bring the family over. And a lot of the people in Holland and Belgium have little museums. Some of them have museums in their basements and things like that. So it's really interesting for genealogy.
It's called Ward Jump.
Word
Yeah,
Junk
Word
is on
Junk.
the History Channel. And the Finding Your Roots is back on PBS with
It's on 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock.
Take it.
Now,
And so recorded.
Oh, yeah.
It's on a couple of times. You
Yeah.
can catch it, yeah,
Yeah.
On Sunday again.
yeah, Sunday night. Okay, next council meeting will be the 3rd of March, 2016, and our next regular branch meeting, the 8th of March, 2016. And our speaker at that time will be
Gord Hillman.
Gord Hillman,
Yes.
That's good.
Okay, yes, Catherine.
There was a gentleman came in this evening, okay, he couldn't stay for our meeting. His name is Sid Thompson, and he was looking to see if we would be able to supply or help him with, next June 2017 is the 75th anniversary of the 44th Sarnia Imperial Squadron Royal Canadian Air Cadets. And they're looking to find some people that might be able to help them find their alumni, because a lot of their records were destroyed for one reason or another through floods and things like that.
He contacted me in the fall last year. So we discussed it, yeah.
And so he talked in, so I have a little information here if anybody's interested. And he was to write a blog for, is that what it was?
I suggested he put something out in the
Well, we said that to him at
Yeah.
the time, but he never did it.
Well,
And,
he's got my card, we'll see what it comes through. Like I
Yeah.
told him, I said, I don't write anything for you. You write it, I'll get it through.
We'll get it on
through
Facebook.
on Facebook.
I had a request today for Odell. Is there any Odell relatives in here?
KD Odell?
K. Capital K, capital B, Odell. He was in the military. I'll put the picture around, or I'll send it down or whatever to whoever. They're
From
one of the
Petrolia?
people, yeah, he signed it on the back, Petrolia.
There's
The
so
old
many
scout.
we come across in the newspaper. when we
But
do
this
it.
is with a group from Manitoba going in World War II. But he looks old enough to be their trainer. Like, he looks 10 years older than everybody else in this picture. So he's like 28 and they're like 18. So, anyway, I'll send it out. If you guys know anything, I'll put it up on Facebook.
He's not one of the Odells mentioned in our.
No.
We've done so many Odells.
Could he have been on that
I don't know.
I have contacted her.
Okay, and Alan,
And part of the reason I contacted her was I wanted for the newsletter, but no, I'm dubious. Her postal address is Minnedosa, Manitoba.
Yeah.
And my great grandfather homesteaded that there. So you don't miss a bet. You never know.
so it'll be in the newsletter then.
I've asked permission, and I need a JPEG so I can put it in because it's a PDF.
I can flip it. I already flipped it.
Oh, you flipped it, okay, well then, I'm just waiting for permission to use.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Motion to adjourn? Oh, look at the hands now, Jane and Nancy.
We gotta get Cindy on her way home. And then you just.
Yes, although she's got no snow down in God's country.
So she can take it back with her.
I have my big truck. You can pile it in.